Okay, so we're going to be moving into our user feedback sessions, which is probably the most exciting part. And our first speaker up is Doc Watson from Connected Conservation. Doc was one of the co-founders of Dimension Data and formed a close association with Cisco, and other parts of technology is core to some of his solutions or connected conservation solutions. And yeah, so Doc, if you could come up, please.
Good morning, everybody. I have to say, I arrived this morning and I sort of walked in that side door, and it was a little overwhelming seeing so many seats. And I thought to myself, when Bruce sort of approached me to do a little presentation, I thought, yeah, with pleasure, I'd love to do a presentation. And I walked in and I found it a little overwhelming this morning. I do have to say, though, I would like to compliment Bruce and Jess and Ted in his absence and the whole team of EarthRanger in terms of putting this together. I think it's an outstanding job, and getting 181 attendees live was pretty exciting when I heard this morning. Pretty nerve-wracking as well. But to have so many people here and so many like-minded people so that we all work together, I think is fantastic. So I'd like to start off by saying to everybody, why don't you all stand up? And I'd like you all to give yourselves a round of applause for making the effort and attending. Okay, you can all sit. Okay, so a little bit of history. Connected conservation was a thought of mine in 2015. We are the biggest global partner. Let me just explain where I'm coming from. That's why I'm hesitating a little bit. I became unemployed at the end of July. When I say unemployed, I retired. And I tell everybody I'm unemployed from the Dimension Data Group, which is part of NTT Holdings. So I'm fully dedicated now to connected conservation. And just taking you back a little bit in the history of connected conservation, it all began at a Cisco conference in 2015. And we always met with the executive chairman, the CEO, and all the senior execs every year, primarily being their biggest global partner. And I said to John Chambers at the time, he was the executive chairman, and I said to him, we're very much in the technology space, the Internet of Things, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard that term IoT. And I said, isn't it time Dimension Data and Cisco got together and did something for our planet? And his answer to me was, well, he does do something in his personal capacity of saving elephants, and he donated to the Chelsea Clinton Foundation. So I said to him, I don't think that's good enough. I think as two technology companies, I think it's time we started to do something. And so I named it Connected Conservation, which I thought at the time was a great IoT type solution of bringing people and technology together. And that's where connected conservation was founded. Okay, so generally our approach in the market is using technology, putting that together with the people on the ground in terms of the game reserves and the national parks that we deal with. So we've been working together on that for 6 years now. And it's effectively going down from the basic interconnectivity of a headquarter right to very technical type solutions as well. So they're very, very basic solutions going through intermediate and very, very advanced solutions. We've got a number of committed technology partners The one in particular is Cisco, and I'll elaborate on them a little later on. NTT, of course, which is our holding company based in Japan. They purchased the Dimension Data Group in 2010. Airbus is a most recent partner of ours, in that they signed up with us to do artificial intelligence and satellite comms. I'm sure you're all aware they have a massive security division, and that's a division we're working with currently. Then, of course, there's Dimension Data. And Dimension Data, we get all our services and skills from them. And of course, Microsoft. Microsoft have joined us. We've just ported our platform to Azure, and we're using the Azure credits for that. So what do we actually do? We're enabling infrastructure for effective operations. So on the one hand, we're dealing with anti-poaching. The other hand, we're dealing with environment and species monitoring, and that's where EarthRanger comes in. And the third one is mitigating human and wildlife conflict. Something I do want to mention here, and I'll go into it in a few slides time, is that the solutions that we have designed together with the operational teams on the ground are proactive solutions. And you might ask, what does a proactive solution mean? So what we do is we do not interfere with the animals at all. So we've created a safe haven for animals to roam freely. And what we try and do is monitor illegal people entering the reserve or national park. So if you have a look here, it's the conservation of management and protection. We have a look at all. I'm going to have to take my glasses off because I can't really see the slide here. I can't see at the back without my glasses, but I can't read the computer with my glasses. So this is where we've teamed up with EarthRanger in every single one of our projects. And it's for the monitoring and the protection of species, the reporting through EarthRanger, building up databases of all the intelligence that we get. In other words, shots fired, fence line cuts, actual poaching incidents, tracks, and all the reporting that we get from EarthRanger. If you have a look at this diagram, you'll see that we use a lot of masts in our solutions. We use local area networks, we use Wi-Fi, we use sensors, we use routers, switches, etc., etc. Just to get into our field projects, we've completed 5 projects currently. So we're covering 1 million hectares, and those projects have been completed in Kenya, in Zambia, and South Africa. Currently, we are busy with 5 new sites, and we hope to deploy and connect 4 million hectares. And those are across Botswana, Kenya, and South Africa. So as you can see in the map of Africa, hopefully we'll be like EarthRanger in a year or 2 and look at all the sites that you have connected up. But that's what we're aspiring to effectively. So to get into a couple of early projects, and the first one we did was in the Sabi Sands Game Reserve. This was a project dating back to 2015 when I first presented to Cisco. The level of communication in the reserve was pretty much next to nothing. In fact, mobile telephones hardly operated. And so we got some design architects and solution architects from Dimension Data, some guys from Cisco, and there was a gentleman in this room who I know a lot of you know about. And when I approached him and said we'd like to network or put in an IoT solution into the Sabi sands, he jumped at the idea. And I'll mention his name, Dave Powery. I think a lot of you know him. And together with his team, Andrew Stein, who's here, Jakes Richter, Harold, Kim, they're all here in terms of putting technology into the Sabi sands. So what we did effectively was we networked the entire perimeter of the reserve with masts using routers and switches. And along the high intensive zones, we put in thermal cameras with thermal imaging. At each one of the gates, we put in local area networks with Wi-Fi and CCTV cameras. We also had sniffer dogs. And then that was phase one, effectively linking all that into an operations center, where we put in 36 screens, and we had monitoring 7/24 by 365 days on 3 shifts per day, 8-hour shifts each. So that's what we put in initially. We had great results. In our first 18 months of operation, we reduced poaching by 96%. And since then, we've continually worked. And as I'm sure you all know, in our work in progress. I don't believe we all things to all people. We design as we go along, and we try and improve continually with new partners and sign up new partners to add to what we already know. So the Sabi sands, I believe, has been a great success for us. We moved on into northern Kenya, Lewa Wildlife Conservancy, and we worked together with Ian Craig and his whole team. And I know, coincidentally, Mr. Powery has moved up there for NRT, Northern Rangelands Trust, and he has his whole team here as well. So we've linked them. It was a very basic infrastructure initially, an operations center monitoring elephants. We moved in, we put in camera traps at each one of the water holes, and linking those to masts with routing technology on those masts, and that with LoRa technology as well, the gateways, and we backhaul that into the operations center so certain activities can be seen in the outlying areas of Sarah, Ratiti, Lontopi, etc., coming back into Lewa. So they're very tailored solutions. And as you can see there, I think they're networking solutions, which are very, very basic, just communication with digital radios, and then networking and making them more advanced. And that very much depends on the operational team on the ground. So the needs of the operational team on the ground are critically important. And that's how we design the solution around those teams themselves. And I think just to mention, in terms of those teams, I think the criticality and one of the greatest success factors is the operational team on the ground actually running the solution for the reserve or the national park. If you don't have that, you're on a hiding to nothing and it's a non-starter. So in all the sites, the 5 sites that we've installed our solutions, and all different solutions, I might add, from basic solutions to advanced solutions, the operational team are the success factor. They've adopted it, they run it, and they are having great success. So how do we, well, let me take one step back. While I was still employed, I decided to form a foundation, which is the Connected Conservation Foundation in 2019 for non-profit. And that's where these grant opportunities came in. So it's totally for non-profit. The equipment, the taxes, the importation, the duties, etc., come in from Cisco if the need is there that we use Cisco equipment. So me, in my humble ways, I have to beg, borrow, and I'm sorry to use the word steal, in terms of getting equipment from suppliers, and we have to raise money to pay for that equipment. In terms of Dimension Data and NTT, they provide the engineers for the design work, the actual services, the actual support is also supplied by NTT and Dimension Data. And then in terms of Microsoft, they are supplying Azure credits to us for free. And then Airbus, we've just got 2 pilot sites where we're using high resolution satellite for Earth observation. They're giving us time on their satellite globally to run tests for 6 months. So of course, match funding is needed for any supplier outside of what I've mentioned, which is always a difficult thing, as you all know. So here, once again, and I'm stressing the fact that you have to match appropriate technology to the operational teams on the ground. And I think that is a critical factor. So what we have are layered solutions to suit those operational levels. You have 3 intersecting circles here. The one establishing a joint operations center, and I'll elaborate a little further on that. And it's tailoring the solution to meet the needs on the ground. I think that is another, well, the most important factor. The backbone network, increasing data flows from areas of interest or areas of intensive poaching zones. And then the third area is the proactive solution. So predicting and detecting issues in real time. So if we have a look at the operations center, that's where we've set up very early stage communications and connectivity. Obviously, the local area networks with Wi-Fi. This is where EarthRanger come in, setting it up in the operations center. And then it's obviously for early detection. If we move to the backbone network, you'll see the masts in play here with the radios. The backbone network is ruggedized routers and switches. They can be either point-to-point or point-to-multi-point routers, bringing in entire peripheries. And then we use, obviously, integrated local area networks, digital radios, and that all also comes into operational centers. If we look at the proactive solution, this is where in the high intensive zones, we fix masts, PTZ cameras, which are the thermal cameras, onto masts themselves. And through thermal imaging and the backbone network, we are able to pick up unlawful individuals coming into a reserve or a national park. So if we have a look at that, I just want to play a video for you. There we go. So this is a poaching team called Totally Unaware in a reserve. Here they've come in the fence line effectively, moved across the road into the reserve and was picked up by thermal cameras and the thermal imaging in the operations center. And here, as I mentioned in the beginning, is effectively the 24/7 monitoring, 3 teams of 8 hours each, 24/7 by 365 days. And we're able to pick up on the image and through artificial intelligence learn about the images that we're picking up. And effectively, we can determine what they're actually carrying with them. What we've also gone along the road with is looking at nomadic masts, because as you know, poaching teams are incredibly sophisticated, and so they move from danger areas. And these nomadic masts we've just finished designing, and effectively they'll be mobile units. So we'll have fixed cameras as well as a mobile nomadic mast as well, where we'll put it in a high intensive zone and hopefully pick up the insurgents of poaching teams. If we have a look Obviously, the teams on the ground need ongoing training and support. So we're not there as a foundation to just put in a solution and up and go. There's continual support in terms of service level agreements, in terms of any of the equipment going on the blink, replacement pieces of equipment. We also train the individuals to a level that they are able to actually run the solutions themselves. We are, of course, there for either telephonic calls or remote service calls. But what we do with our presence in Africa particularly is we have offices in 39 countries in Africa. And so we like to service the reserves on the ground. So it's not a matter of people flying around Africa from different countries. It's hopefully servicing those teams on the ground. So upcoming technologies, I have mentioned it already, which is now in pilot phase, and that's the partnership with the Airbus Foundation, exploring wildlife monitoring from the sky. So we can actually pick up, as an example, a rhino from the satellite comms, pick it up, know that it's a large mammal, and in fact, through artificial intelligence, learn that it actually is a rhino. So I think hopefully that's encapsulating what I wanted to say. I think we start from very, very basic solutions, work together with yourselves, and depending on the needs of the reserve or the national park, that's how we will design the solution together with yourselves. Thank you very much for listening to me, and thank you for the opportunity.